For a few years until 2024, it was rare to see me spending time in the kitchen like this. My mind was always preoccupied with building an online business and getting it off the ground quickly. I did minimum housework. Meals were simple if I actually cooked, and I always rushed to get it over with so I could go back to my work. Often I would ask my husband to get some takeouts on his way back home or order some pizza. As I put my priority on finishing whatever tasks I was working on, my family often had to wait past mealtime. Thinking back now, they were really patient. Never once they complained about it. I'm sure my husband would have loved to come home to some warm, homemade meals after a long day at work. I struggled with home and work balance. I've been a homemaker since we got married 23 years ago. After our youngest son started kindergarten, I started to work from home part-time, doing some translation works, web writings, tutoring, and online English teaching. As I continued to explore what I could do, I started to feel like I had nothing. Trying to join the working world after being away for 23 years was quite challenging. Our world has changed so much in the last 20 plus years, and I felt like a person who had just come out of a cave or had time slipped from the early 2000s. Not only that, I began to notice that I was fearful of many things that I was not before. After graduating from high school in Japan, I went to the States for school alone and had lived in the States for about 7 years before I came to Canada. When I came to Canada, I didn't know anyone other than my husband, but I never once worried about anything. I was independent and confident. But after 20 years, I didn't recognize myself. I didn't know what I liked, what I was good at, what my passion was, if there was any. It is an awful feeling to have when you don't recognize who you are anymore. I felt so lost. I need to find myself. As it became more and more clear to me that I didn't know who I was anymore, I was convinced that I had to find myself. As I started my journey of trying to find myself and explored different options for my career path, I stumbled across the world of online business. Back then, I didn't even know what exactly online business was. I remember listening to a podcast, and tears started to stream down my face, and I ended up sobbing because the podcaster was sharing her journey of becoming an entrepreneur and her story of before her transformation described exactly how I was and how I felt at that time. Someone actually understood what I was going through. I couldn't believe someone actually put in words what I was going through and how I felt. I got hooked. I binge listened to many of the episodes, which led me to other resources like YouTube videos in the same niche, books, audiobooks, etc. I learned about starting a blog, a podcast, creating a course, writing a book, and other things that I never thought were possible to do in the past. I got so excited. These people, called entrepreneurs, seem to have such fulfilled lives, making unbelievable amount of money doing what they were passionate about. It opened the door to this unfamiliar yet super attractive world, and I dove right in. I wanted to change my life, and I wanted to become financially free. If they could, I can too. I'm going to change the life of my family. I felt so much hope, and I believed without doubt that this was it. I saw so much potential in starting my own business online, and I was determined. Though I didn't know what I was doing, I did whatever they said that I should. If they said, this is what worked for me and you need it, I was convinced. If only I had this, I could succeed. So I jumped from one advice to another and became a webinar and online course gypsy. I guess you can say that their marketing strategies were very successful. So when the lockdown started during COVID, I thought, perfect. Now I don't have to drive my boys. There's gonna be more time to work on my online business. So I spent most of my time sitting in front of my computer trying to get my business off the ground, just doing minimum housework that was absolutely necessary, which were daily cooking, weekly laundry, and occasional cleanings. My older two boys were in high school, and my youngest was in grade 4 at that time. They were attending their online classes, and it was perfect. As long as they finished their homework, and I didn't hear anything from their teachers, I thought it was good. I didn't know at that time that I would later regret how I neglected them during this time. This was one of the mistakes that I wish I could take back and do it all over again. I beat myself up for a long time because of this mistake. Through it all, I felt God's nudges from time to time, calling me to go back home. I thought, yes, Lord, I know. I will pay attention to my home, my family, but I can work on building my business at the same time as well. I believed I could, and I had to, because I had to prove to the world that I was capable of doing anything I put my mind to, like I used to. I had to prove that my neglecting my family was justified. I had to be able to say that it was a worthwhile sacrifice. I can't quit until I have something to show, I thought. There were many times I felt that I almost got it. I felt that it was within my reach. This is it. It's gonna finally take off, I thought. But something would happen. For instance, I got pneumonia in the middle of a launch and I had to stop. A few months later, I was finally able to get back on my feet. But this time, my dad, who lived in Taiwan, became very ill, and I had to fly back home to care for him. So again, there was a long pause. God never allowed me to succeed after all. Although I was getting extremely frustrated on my journey, I thank Him now that He didn't allow me, because God knew something that I didn't know. He knew that I wasn't only sacrificing my relationship with my family, but also my relationship with Him. His priority was to get that part straight instead of lifting my business off the ground. God is so good. Because I didn't get anywhere despite all the time, effort, and sacrifice I made. I was under tremendous pressure and stress. At the end, I felt worse than when I first realized that I didn't know who I was anymore. To say that I was completely lost and depressed is an understatement. What I was experiencing inside started to surface and affected me physically. I would wake up in the middle of the night with an overwhelming sense of fear and could not go back to sleep. My heart palpitation got worse because of many late nights and lack of sleep for a long period of time. It made me feel so weak sometimes. I would lie on bed unable to move, and I would wonder, am I dying right now? My chest felt so heavy and I couldn't take deep breath. There was no joy in me, and I constantly fought with the overwhelming sense of hopelessness, self-condemnation, and loss. I was not happy. This is not the life I wanted. This is not the life I would have chosen. When I looked at my life, it looked like it was under a shade of gray. I was miserable, to say the least. I really wanted to change my life, but I felt like a useless failure, trapped and stuck. I struggled until I really had nothing else left in me, and then I finally turned to God. I felt so desperate, and I cried out to God for help like never before. As I committed myself to let go of everything and just spend time with the Lord last summer, the summer of 2024, by studying His Word and praying, He started to restore me. For the first time in my 29 years of calling myself a Christian, I experienced joy no matter what and peace that surpasses all understanding that the Bible talks about. By studying His Word, I was drawn so much closer to God, and I started to feel His presence like never before. I learned to truly surrender to Him as I believed without doubt that He's a loving and trustworthy God, full of mercy and grace. That's when "die to yourself so you can live" made perfect sense to me for the first time. I am okay with anything, Lord. I trust you. To be able to completely abandon myself to God became my ultimate goal. It is no longer, "God, please do this," or "God, make this happen." Instead, I'm learning to say, "God, this is what's in my heart, but I trust you for what you're doing and what you will do. Please equip me so that I can stand firm and not depart from you no matter what. May your will be done." It felt so free to step into a new stage of my faith journey last summer as I shed the weights that were weighing me down and started to just focus my eyes on Jesus and Him alone. What I also learned was that the so-called work-home balance never existed. We need to prioritize. When your priority is right, life will be in its utmost balance. When you truly put God first, when your heart is aligned with God's plan and His will, when you daily abide in Him, that's when the peace, joy, and hope the Bible talks about becomes reality. Jesus said in Matthew 10:39, "Whoever finds his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life for my sake will find it." This is true after all. So now, I don't feel rushed to make a meal anymore. I find joy in cooking a healthy meal for my family and sitting around the dining table eating together, talking about what happened that day, sharing what's going on in each other's lives, talking about world events and discussing Christian worldviews has become the time I look forward to every evening. As we eat, talk, and laugh, I cannot help but to smile and thank God for resetting my life and allowing me to start over at the dawn of my 50th birthday last month.